The Terran diplomatic vessel Olive Branch gleamed against the backdrop of the Galactic Assembly's orbital station, its sleek hull bearing Earth's united flag and the universal symbols of peace. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the bridge's observation window, her ceremonial uniform pristine, watching as the massive station grew larger in their approach. After decades of monitoring galactic communications and preparing for this moment, humanity was finally ready to join the interstellar community. Final approach vectors received. Ambassador Captain Miguel Torres announced, his hand steady on the neural interface controls. The Assembly's dockmasters are guiding us in. Sarah nodded, suppressing the flutter of anticipation in her stomach. This mission represented humanity's careful, measured approach to joining galactic society. They'd spent years studying intercepted communications, developing translation matrices, and preparing for this moment. Unlike the chaos of accidental first contact scenarios in old science fiction, Earth had chosen to reveal itself only after it was ready. The ship's diplomatic contingent of 50 representatives from Earth's united government stood ready, each carefully selected for their expertise and temperament. They carried with them proof of humanity's technological advancement, cultural achievements, and most importantly, their willingness to be peaceful members of the galactic community. Ambassador, the ship's AI, Araya, interrupted Sarah's thoughts. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the station. They don't match the standard docking protocols in our database. Before Sarah could respond, brilliant beams of energy lanced out from concealed weapons ports on the station. They sliced through the Olive Branch's shields that should have been more than capable of withstanding known assembly weapons. Impossible, Captain Torres shouted, his hands flying over the controls. They're using banned quantum phase weapons. Our shields are useless. Sarah watched in horror as the ship's hull began to tear apart. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as sections of the vessel were exposed to vacuum. The screams of her fellow diplomats echoed through the ship's internal communications before being cut short. Broadcasting emergency protocols, Araya announced, her artificial voice steady even as chaos erupted around them. All channels, all frequencies. Earth must know. The bridge exploded in a cascade of searing light. Sarah's last thought, as the vacuum of space claimed her, was not of fear or anger, but of clarity. They had misunderstood something fundamental about the galaxy. Their careful preparation, their peaceful intentions, none of it had mattered. On Earth, billions watched in stunned silence as the live feed from the Olive Branch showed their first diplomatic mission end in brutal destruction. The Assembly's following broadcast was short and clear. Let this serve as a warning. Humanity's expansion ends here. Return to your world and remain there, or face extinction. They didn't wait for Earth's response before terminating the connection. In the crushing silence that followed, Earth's unified government convened an emergency session. The carefully maintained facade of a relatively primitive civilization beginning to reach for the stars fell away. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Fleet Admiral Helena Vasquez stood before the assembled world leaders. They believe they've encountered a young species taking its first steps into space, she said, her voice hard as steel. They have no idea that we've spent the last 50 years preparing for exactly this scenario. She gestured and holographic displays filled the chamber, showing vast underground shipyards and weapons platforms that had been hidden from prying eyes. The Assembly thinks they've sent us a message, Helena continued, her eyes burning with controlled fury. They believe they've shown us our place in the galaxy. Instead, they've given us something far more valuable, proof that our caution was warranted, and justification for what comes next. The assembled leaders looked at the displays showing Earth's true military capability. Ships equipped with technologies that had been kept secret even from most of humanity, weapons developed through decades of careful observation and reverse engineering of crashed alien vessels that had been intentionally disabled by Earth's hidden defenses. We wanted peace, Helena said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. We were prepared for war. The Assembly has chosen to show us only brutality. Very well. Let us show them what humanity is truly capable of when pushed too far. As the leaders deliberated, Earth's hidden fleets began to power up. In shipyards concealed beneath the oceans, inside hollow mountains, and within the dark craters of Mars, humanity's real space force prepared for war. The Assembly had meant to extinguish humanity's dreams of the stars. Instead, they had ignited a fire that would reshape the galaxy. The response would not be immediate. There would be no hot-headed rush to revenge. Earth would maintain its masquerade of a wounded primitive species, seemingly cowed by the Assembly's show of force. But in the shadows, humanity's true strength would gather. The Assembly thought they had encountered a young, naive species. They were about to learn they had attacked something far more dangerous, a humanity that had spent half a century preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never mistake preparation for weakness or patience for fear. 6 months after the destruction of the Olive Branch, the Galactic Assembly's High Council gathered in their grand chamber on Nexus Prime. The massive crystalline dome above them reflected the light of 3 suns, casting prismatic patterns across the assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds. High Chancellor Vex Thor, their most senior member, rose to address the gathering. "The human question has been resolved," he announced, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. "Our demonstration has kept them contained within their solar system. Their primitive sensors have detected our blockade fleet, and they show no signs of attempting to challenge our authority." In the shadows of the chamber's upper gallery, a figure that appeared to be a maintenance drone continued its work, its movements deliberate and unhurried. None of the council members noticed as it placed tiny quantum transmitters throughout the chamber, devices that would soon prove crucial to humanity's response. Deep within Earth's Challenger base, buried beneath the Mariana Trench, Admiral Helena Vasquez watched the Assembly's proceedings through the eyes of Major Sarah Chen. The same Sarah Chen who the Assembly believed had died aboard the Olive Branch. Her quantum-enhanced body now housed technology that allowed her to perfectly mimic any known species. "Transmission is clean," Sarah subvocalized, her words reaching Earth through quantum entanglement channels undetectable by Assembly technology. "They still have no idea." Helena allowed herself a grim smile. For 6 months, they had played the part of a cowed civilization perfectly. Meanwhile, Operation Silent Thunder had moved forward with mechanical precision. Sleeper agents like Sarah had infiltrated every major Assembly installation. Earth's hidden fleets had maneuvered into position using drive systems that left no trace in normal space. And most importantly, they had identified their allies. The humans' primitive shielding technology proved useless against our weapons. Vex Thor continued, pride evident in his voice. "They cannot hope to." The chamber's lights suddenly failed, plunging the Assembly into darkness. When they returned seconds later, the massive holographic displays that normally showed diplomatic proceedings instead carried a single image, the burnt and broken hull of the Olive Branch. Admiral Vasquez's voice, translated simultaneously into every known galactic language, filled the chamber. "You believe you were dealing with primitives," she said, her tone carrying an edge that made several council members flinch. "You thought your technological superiority gave you the right to murder peaceful envoys. Today, you learn how wrong you were." Across Assembly space, carefully planted quantum charges detonated simultaneously. No lives were lost. That was deliberate. But in an instant, every major military installation's defensive systems went dark. Weapon platforms turned to slag. Communications arrays fell silent. In orbit around Earth, the Assembly's blockade fleet discovered too late that their targeting systems had been compromised months ago. From the dark side of Mars, humanity's true warships emerged. They were nothing like the primitive vessels the Assembly had expected. These ships moved like liquid shadow, their quantum phase drives bending light and space around them. "Your blockade fleet is now trapped in a temporal stasis field," Helena continued, as Assembly commanders watched helplessly as their ships froze in space and time. "They are unharmed, but they will remain frozen until we choose to release them. Consider this a demonstration of our actual capabilities. The assembly chamber erupted in chaos. Security forces rushed in, only to find their weapons non-functional. Sarah, still in her maintenance drone disguise, continued her work, observing the panic with clinical detachment. "We could have responded to your attack with equal brutality." Helena's voice cut through the chaos. "We could have destroyed your fleets, burned your worlds. Instead, we offer you a choice. In 1 hour, representatives from the Resistance will address this chamber. Species you have oppressed, civilizations you have relegated to second-class status. You will listen to them. You will negotiate in good faith, or you will discover that what you've seen today is merely a fraction of humanity's true capabilities." As if to emphasize her point, every ship in Earth's revealed fleet simultaneously activated their primary weapon systems. The energy readings made assembly sensors scream in protest. The message was clear. Humanity could have chosen annihilation. They were choosing something else. In the chamber, Vex Thor sank into his seat. His earlier bravado evaporated. Around him, other council members began urgently conferring with their governments. They had believed themselves to be teaching primitive humans their place in the galaxy. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant, one that had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. As Sarah watched from her hidden position, she reflected on how perfectly humanity had played its role. They had appeared weak when they were strong, primitive when they were advanced, isolationist when they had already spread their influence throughout assembly space. Now that deception would serve a greater purpose, not just humanity's survival, but the reformation of a corrupt galactic order. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity, far from being its newest primitive member, would help guide that change, not through brutality or domination, but through the careful application of strength in service of justice. The silent thunder had spoken. Now, the real work would begin. The massive assembly chamber had transformed in the hours following humanity's revelation of power. Where once the High Council sat in elevated positions above the lesser species, now representatives from a dozen oppressed civilizations stood at the same level, their voices carrying equal weight. Dr. Lyra Nash, Earth's chief xenodiplomat, stood beside Cattell, a crystalline being whose species, the Lumini, had been relegated to mining colonies for centuries. Their natural ability to process and refine quantum crystals had made them valuable and vulnerable to assembly exploitation. For 300 cycles, Cattell's harmonious voice resonated through the chamber. "We have provided the crystals that power your ships, your cities, your weapons. In return, we received scraps from your table and watched our homeworld's resources depleted." Above them, the former council members shifted uncomfortably. The human fleet's demonstration had stripped away their illusion of invulnerability. Now, they were forced to listen. In orbit around key assembly worlds, Earth's ships maintained their silent vigil. Their presence was both protection and warning, ensuring the safety of the formerly oppressed species who now spoke, while reminding the assembly of the consequences of returning to old ways. Admiral Vasquez, coordinating from Challenger Base, watched the proceedings through quantum-linked feeds. "Status report," she commanded. "Liberation fleets have secured the Lumini crystal mines," Captain Marcus Chen reported. "The Vrosk labor camps in the Centauri sector are being evacuated. Medical ships are en route." The Vrosk, massive insectoid beings, had been forced to work in high-gravity environments that slowly crushed their exoskeletons. Their crime: developing faster-than-light technology independently of assembly control. The assembly's military response, Vasquez asked, though she already knew the answer. "Non-existent," Marcus confirmed. "Our quantum virus has thoroughly compromised their command and control systems. They're still trying to understand how we did it." The truth was elegant in its simplicity. While the assembly had focused on conventional military technology, bigger ships, stronger weapons, humanity had pursued a different path. They had developed systems that worked between the lines of normal spacetime, weapons that didn't destroy but disabled. And most importantly, they had learned the value of patience. In the chamber, Dr. Nash stepped forward. "The terms of galactic reorganization are not negotiable," she announced, her voice firm but not cruel. "Equal representation for all spacefaring species, immediate cessation of forced labor, fair distribution of resources." A Vrosk representative, their newly repaired exoskeleton gleaming, raised all four arms. "And what guarantee do we have that humans won't simply replace the assembly as our overlords?" Lyra smiled. "Because we're not interested in empire. Earth learned long ago that true strength comes from cooperation, not domination. We hid our capabilities not out of fear, but because we wanted to understand the galaxy's power structure before we changed it." She gestured, and holographic displays showed Earth ships working alongside Lumini crystal crafters, human medical teams treating Vrosk workers, and joint research projects already beginning between species. "We could have chosen destruction," Lyra continued. "Instead, we choose construction. We could have sought revenge. Instead, we seek justice. The Assembly's greatest mistake wasn't attacking us. It was assuming that advanced technology must be paired with the desire to dominate." In the shadows of the chamber, Sarah Chen, still in her maintenance drone disguise, planted the final quantum transmitters. Soon, this room would become the heart of a new galactic democracy, one where no species could claim superiority over another. The Assembly members, watching their power structure crumble, had no choice but to adapt. Human ships controlled their military installations. Human technology had proven superior. But most importantly, human wisdom had united the oppressed species they had long exploited. As the day's session ended, Admiral Vasquez received a private transmission from Sarah. "We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the Assembly's core worlds," she reported. "Something's happening beneath the surface, literally." Vasquez frowned. "Elaborate." "Deep scan shows massive underground complexes activating. Whatever the Assembly's been hiding all these years, they're either preparing to reveal it or use it." The Admiral's expression hardened. They had expected this, the Assembly's last-ditch effort to maintain control. But humanity had prepared for this too. The question was, would the price of true galactic freedom be higher than anyone had anticipated? "Maintain surveillance," she ordered. "If they want to play their final card, let them. We'll show them ours." The game wasn't over. But humanity had changed the rules forever. The chains of oppression were breaking across the galaxy, and in their place, something new was forming. A unity forged not through force, but through the shared desire for justice. The real test was about to begin. Deep beneath the surface of Nexus Prime, in chambers that predated the Assembly itself, High Chancellor Vexthor stood before an ancient terminal. Around him, crystalline pillars pulsed with an otherworldly energy that even the Lumini couldn't comprehend. This was the Assembly's greatest secret, their true source of power. "Initiate Protocol Omega," he commanded, his mandibles clicking in desperate determination. "Authorization. Primordial override." Above ground, Dr. Lyra Nash was in the midst of negotiating resource redistribution treaties when the first tremors began. The chamber's crystalline dome darkened, not from any natural phenomenon, but from something rising from beneath the planet's crust. "Admiral." Sarah Chen's quantum transmission cut through all encryption. "They're activating something. Something big." In Challenger Base, Admiral Vasquez watched as sensors recorded a power surge that defied known physics. "All ships, battle stations," she ordered. "Contingency Protocol Prometheus is now in effect." Across assembly space, ancient machines stirred to life, massive constructs that had been buried for millennia. They rose from ocean floors, emerged from mountain ranges, and broke through the surfaces of moons. The Assembly's last resort was revealing itself. They were not just the current galactic power, they were the inheritors of a civilization that had ruled the stars long before any current species had achieved spaceflight. On Nexus Prime, Vexthor's voice boomed across all frequencies. Did you think we achieved dominion by chance? We are the chosen inheritors of the Precursor's legacy. Their weapons are our weapons. Their power is our power. Submit or witness forces beyond your comprehension. The ancient machines, each the size of a small moon, began to move. Assembly members who had seemed defeated now stood with renewed arrogance. This was their trump card, the power they had always held in reserve. But in Challenger Base, Admiral Vasquez smiled. "Sir?" Captain Chen questioned, noting her expression. "Humanity wasn't the only species to discover the precursor ruins," she explained. "We just made different choices about how to use that knowledge." She opened a secure channel to all human ships and their allied forces. Execute Prometheus Protocol. Authorization. Lazarus Rising. Across human space, hidden installations activated. But unlike the Assembly's weapons of war, these installations began broadcasting a signal, a complex quantum frequency that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of space-time. The effect was immediate. The ancient machines froze. Their imposing forms, previously humming with destructive power, grew still. In the assembly chamber, Dr. Nash stepped forward. "You found their weapons," she announced to the shocked council members. "We found their wisdom. You sought to inherit their power. We chose to understand their purpose." The quantum broadcast continued, and the massive machines began to transform. Weapons became tools. Engines of destruction became engines of creation. The Precursor's true legacy was revealing itself. "They weren't conquerors," Lyra explained, her voice carrying the weight of decades of research. "They were guardians. They didn't build weapons. They built tools to reshape reality itself. Tools you corrupted and misunderstood in your quest for dominion." As if to demonstrate her words, one of the transformed machines began repairing the environmental damage on a nearby mining world. Another started cleansing a polluted atmosphere. The Precursor's technology had never been meant for war. It had been designed to nurture and protect life throughout the galaxy. In his underground chamber, Vexthor watched in horror as his last gambit crumbled. "Impossible," he whispered. "We spent millennia studying their technology." "But you never asked why," Sarah Chen said, stepping from the shadows, her maintenance drone disguise falling away. "You never questioned your own assumptions about power and its purpose." The Assembly's gambit had failed. Their secret weapon had become a tool for healing rather than destruction. And in that moment, the true revolution began, not one of power changing hands, but of power itself being redefined. The galaxy was about to enter a new age, one where the Precursor's legacy would finally be used as intended, not to rule, but to unite, not to destroy, but to create. The Council's shadow had been lifted, revealing a light that would change everything. 1 year after the activation of the Precursor technology, the galactic landscape had transformed beyond recognition. The former assembly chamber on Nexus Prime had been rebuilt, its crystalline dome now reflecting not just the light of 3 suns, but the combined hopes of 1,000 species. Admiral Vasquez stood before the newly formed Galactic Cooperative, her formal uniform a stark contrast to the varied forms of life that filled the chamber. Representatives from every spacefaring species, from the crystalline Lumini to the insectoid Vrosk, sat as equals. "The last of the Precursor installations has been reproposed," she reported. "What were once weapons have become tools of creation. The galaxy is healing." Behind her, holographic displays showed the evidence of this transformation. Dead worlds bloomed with new life. Polluted atmospheres cleared. Species once on the brink of extinction were flourishing in restored habitats. Dr. Lyra Nash, working alongside a team of Lumini crystal crafters, had discovered that the Precursor's technology could be enhanced by combining human quantum engineering with Lumini crystal manipulation. The result was a network of devices that could reshape matter at its most fundamental level. "We were all wrong," she addressed the chamber. "Humans, assembly, everyone. We thought the galaxy was a battleground for dominion. Instead, it was a garden waiting to be tended. The former High Chancellor Vexthor, now stripped of his title but not his voice, had been allowed to speak. And what prevents humanity from using this power as we did? What guarantees that you won't become the very thing you fought against? Sarah Chen, no longer needing disguises, stepped forward. Because we understand something you never did. True power isn't about control, it's about connection. To demonstrate, she activated a quantum interface. The chamber filled with a visualization of the galaxy's quantum web, countless threads of energy and information linking every world, every species, every individual in a vast network of shared consciousness and purpose. This is the precursor's true legacy, she explained. Not dominion over life, but harmony with it. They didn't vanish, they evolved. Became one with the quantum fabric of space-time itself. They left their technology not as weapons, but as tools for other species to follow their path. The implications were staggering. The galaxy wasn't just a collection of worlds and species, it was a living entity, slowly awakening to itself. Every species had a role to play in its evolution. Admiral Vasquez continued, humanity's role wasn't to conquer or rule. It was to help break the cycle of domination, to show that advancement doesn't have to mean destruction. The Galactic Cooperative had become more than just a political body. It was the first step toward a new form of existence. Species that had once fought over resources now worked together to create them from the quantum fabric of reality itself. Ancient enemies found themselves linked in a web of shared consciousness that made conflict not just undesirable, but unthinkable. But what of individuality? A Vrosk representative asked. Do we not risk losing ourselves in this unity? Lyra smiled. Unity doesn't mean uniformity. The quantum web enhances what makes each species unique. It's the difference between a single instrument and a symphony, each part distinct but contributing to something greater. As if to prove her point, the quantum web pulsed with the combined consciousness of billions of beings, each maintaining their individual identity while participating in a vast, cosmic dance of creation. The former assembly's greatest fear had been losing power. In the end, they discovered, as humanity had, that true power came from letting go of the need to control. The galaxy was entering an age where the lines between technology and consciousness, between individual and collective, between matter and energy, were blurring. We stand at a threshold, Admiral Vasquez concluded, not just of space and time, but of existence itself. The precursors showed us the path. Together, we'll walk it. In the space around Nexus Prime, the transformed precursor machines continued their work, their ancient forms now instruments of life rather than death. The galaxy spiraled on, its arms filled not with the light of burning worlds, but with the glow of civilizations learning to shine together. Humanity had come to the stars preparing for war while hoping for peace. They had found neither. Instead, they had discovered transcendence. The dawn of unity had arrived, and with it, the true beginning of their cosmic journey. It wasn't an ending. It was an evolution. And it was just the beginning.